Today, knowledge is not only power, knowledge is profit. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. It's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. In school, they taught you what to learn, like math and history or science, but there were no classes on how to learn. And I think if there's one skill for all of us to get better at, it's our ability to learn rapidly. I believe the success formula for all of us is H cubed, 3 H's. It has to go from your head to your heart to your hands. You could have goals in your head, a vision of your life or your career, but if you're not acting consistently with your hands, you're doing the work, check in with the second H, which is our heart, which is a symbol of emotions. Burnout often stems from decision fatigue or constant overstimulation. Everybody has a to-do list. I still think it's important for everyone to have a not to-do list. Part of being limitless is putting borders and boundaries, protecting the things that are important to you, like your time, your focus, your energy. You don't have focus, there's a process for focusing. You don't have a memory, there's a 3-stage process for memorizing something. You don't even have energy, there's a process for generating energy. You either have it or don't have it, then you're kind of stuck. But if it's a process, you just do it or don't do it. So next time you feel stalled and you're procrastinating, ask yourself this question.
Welcome back to the Healing and Human Potential podcast, where today we're going to dive into giving you practical tips on how to supercharge your brain and make learning more effortless for different types of learning styles. You'll learn what yours is and then how to improve it. You'll also be able to improve your memory and focus. So even if you have a lot of distractions, you can set yourself up to be able to focus and retain information, really play at the top of your game with brain health and function. Because today's guest, Jim Kwik, is a speaker, he's an author, and been a brain coach for over 25 years. And he's giving us practical tips on things that we can do to upgrade our cognitive functioning. And we can apply that to parenting, to business, to sales, to coaching, to all the different areas of our life so we can really tap into our full potential. You are going to want to take notes for this one. I'm so happy you're here. And you have such an inspiring story, from being the boy with a broken brain to being this world-renowned brain expert, helping people really step into their full potential, which is so beautiful. Talk to us a little bit about your journey. What got you here?
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who's joining. My inspiration really was my desperation. I think a lot of people could relate to the idea where through struggles, you find some kind of strength, or with some kind of challenge, you have some change. And I turn my mess into my message. When people see me at events, I train them on how to improve their memory, their focus, their learning abilities, and optimize their brain power. But it wasn't always like that for me. I grew up with very, as you mentioned, a quote unquote, a broken brain. I had learning difficulties, poor focus, poor memory. It came from, I had a traumatic brain injury when I was 5. So I had an unfortunate accident, or some people would say fortunate accident. I was in kindergarten class. I took a really bad fall. I rushed to the emergency room, knocked unconscious, lost all this blood, but what really showed up was in school. I had poor focus, poor memory. I just didn't learn. I had processing issues. Teachers would have to repeat themselves over and over again. And then I would eventually learn to pretend to understand, but I didn't really understand. It took me 3 years just to learn how to read like the other kids. That was very embarrassing. A lot of self-esteem issues, as you can imagine, a lot of self-doubt, belief in myself. When I was 9 years old, I was slowing down in class and being pretty teased a lot. Teacher came to my defense. She pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, "Leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." And that's where that moniker came in. She had great intentions, I'm sure, but all I took from it was, wow, I didn't know I was broken. And that became my belief system, my inner dialogue. So every time I did badly in school, I would always say, oh, because I have the broken brain. And that became my reality. So that label became my limit. I struggled all through school, middle school, junior high, high school, barely able to pass. But eventually I found a mentor when I was 18. And it really opened up my mind into the power that we have between our ears. I started studying, brain science, adult learning theory, ancient mnemonics. Like I wanted to find out, like, how did people remember things thousands of years ago when there weren't printing presses and the internet? And a light switch flipped on, and I just, after 60 days, my grades improved and just my life improved after that. And I couldn't help but help other people. So I'm in my early 50s. I've been doing this for over 3 decades, and it's just my mission to build better, brighter brains. No brain left behind.
Yeah. I love that you took something that you struggled with to not only improve your own life, but then to share and serve others with it. I had a learning disability in reading comprehension. So I had a similar thing with learning slowly. I didn't have a brain injury, but I just didn't learn the same way. And it's surprising to me that we don't learn how our brains learn unless we figure it out on our own. Like that should have been something. I went to college. I finally figured out how my brain worked and learned. And I was like, why wouldn't we learn this in grade school? Why didn't we learn this in the beginning? That would have saved us a lot of time. And it leads me just to get curious. I know we have different learning styles and different types of brains. Are there unique styles of learning that we can understand? How do I learn, and how can I personalize my learning strategies to support that unique style?
That's a wonderful question. I realized as a coach in this space that it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. It's a very subtle difference. It's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. And that we all have genius and intelligence that expresses itself in different ways. You know, in school, you're right, they taught you what to learn, like math and history or science, but there were no classes on how to learn. And I think if there's one skill for all of us to get better at, to make our lives easier, you know, to be more productive, to raise our level of success is our ability to learn rapidly. You know, now today, knowledge is not only power, knowledge is profit. And the faster you can learn, the faster you can earn. But everyone learns it a little bit differently. With the updated version of my book, Limitless, we talk about personalized learning styles. And it's more than just, some people like to learn visually or auditorily, like hearing, listening to podcasts or audiobooks, or some people like to read, or some people like to roll up their sleeves and do it. We've identified 4 brain types. So just like, you know, in wellness, there's like personalized nutrition based on an assessment, maybe a microbiome test or
your blood type. Yeah.
Right. Or a nutrient profile test. And there's personalized medicine based on like maybe a DNA test. We created a simple 4-minute assessment that determines your dominant brain type. And based on that brain type would inform, just like any assessment would, medical assessment, health assessment, your future behaviors, like how to learn better and how to perform better based on your brain type. So I could go through them really quick for everybody.
Yeah, I would love to hear them.
I don't get to talk about this a lot, but this thing I'm most excited about is personalized learning performance. So we made it the 4 animals. You know, it's kind of like the assessments like people take is like, you know, which Game of Thrones character or Harry Potter, you know, school you in. And people could take it at mybrainanimal.com. It's free. It takes 4 minutes, multiple choice. And think about your brain code, CODE. And I made it an acronym for the animals. So the C are your cheetahs. And if people happen to be watching this on your video, I'm just showing a picture of a cheetah. The cheetah, their dominant brain type, their trait is action, right? Cheetahs are very fast. They're they go by their intuition. They don't have to think about things because they act. And that's their dominant trait. The O in code are your owls. And your owls, their dominant trait is logic. They love to reason. They love to really use critical thinking. So the idea here is they love facts and they love formulas. They love figures. They love data. Your D in code are your dolphins. And dolphins, their dominant trait is creativity. You know, they love the power of the imagination. They're really good pattern recognizers. They have a vision of their life or maybe their business or their mission. Maybe other people can't see it yet, but they have a lot of passion behind that vision. And then finally, your E, the E in code are your elephants, and their dominant trait is empathy. And these are people who are great collaborators. They're great community builders. They have high levels of compassion. They want people to feel seen and heard. So the idea here is once you understand what brain animal you are, then we show people, because it's just like wellness. Some things just don't move the needle or they're benign, right? You give people strategies, and some people, this diet really works for them or this exercise routine works for them, and sometimes it doesn't. This is personalized almost every area of your life. So as an example, and just to make it more vivid who these animals are, if you take a show like Friends, right? The TV sitcom, Ross would be your owl. He's your scientist. Okay. He's your professor, right? Loves the facts. Joey would be your cheetah. Doesn't think, just acts, right? On impulse. High intuition just does it. Phoebe was the one that plays a lot of music and the artist. She's your dolphin. Monica loves to host. Everything has to be at her apartment, and she brings everyone together, and she would be your elephant. And it's interesting. We had recently our team take this assessment, and it's funny, 100% of our customer service or customer support team turned out to be, what animal would you guess?
The Rachel's, the collaborators. What was that one?
Exactly, your elephants.
Yes, the elephants.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So like they were all, and we didn't hire for that.
Yeah.
But we realized that we've been working with a lot of companies, and they're using this model to hire for various positions. Like, for example, our CEO is an owl. Like, he needs to see the numbers every single day. My business partner, our CEO, she's a dolphin, very strong dolphin, is very vision driven. And so it's interesting how that plays out. Like, our creative team, are also a lot of dolphins, and it's interesting. You could parent that way. You could have your kids take it, and because think about it, cheetah would read, they would be more skimming, right? Doing these short study sprints, where creatives like dolphins are going to visualize more of what they read, as an example.
Would a cheetah be more kinesthetic learner as well, more experiential because of the action? Would that also correlate?
It would layer over cheetahs, and also your elephants, who are very attuned also with feelings and their body, their kinesthetic. So it's interesting. Like, even with sales, you could apply this not only for learning but for sales. If you're selling to an owl, you want to make sure you have all the facts and all the research, all the evidence that shows this is possible. If you're selling to a dolphin, you would be able to hear their vision of their life and see how your product or service, fits into that. If you're selling to an elephant, great facts and great vision, but they need the relationship itself is more important than, in terms of trust and making them feel seen and heard. And so
I love this. I love this because it's like not only self-aware, but then you can also apply it in all these different ways. I teach sales around the Enneagram as well as attachment styles, because you're 100% right. The more you understand how people are driven, you can connect with them, create safety, and speak to them in their same language. But what I love about the code, your 4 types, is it's also really kid friendly, right? So you've got these cute, animals, and you could also work with them to teach them in the school systems, which I hope you're doing, or somebody on your team runs with, because I would have loved to have had that. It would have saved me a lot of my self-esteem issues of understanding that I just learn differently than the way that the public school system taught. Because my learning disability is in reading comprehension. And so I don't learn through reading, but I later learned how I learned, and it helped me develop more of my intuitive gifts, which then supported me in being a psychotherapist and a coach. And so it's great. It's like disability, or is that an ability that got further developed? And so I love your perspective around that.
And since everything comes back to the brain, it's how not only how you learn, it's how you communicate, right? Cheetahs, because they get straight to the point, right? Their speech is more concise, more focused, action-oriented. They dislike beating around the bush, right? Because that would waste time. As opposed to an owl, they prefer details. They communicate in a logical sequence. They present facts and figures and data. And dolphins, though, they speak about the bigger picture, about future plans, about innovative ideas, whereas elephants are really keen on understanding and validating the feelings and perspectives of others. So it's interesting how it plays out in day to day.
I love it. I love it. I can't help, I focus so much on the Enneagram, so I can't help but see parallels as well. And I love how distilled this is, because it just normalizes also how we make decisions, like what do we need, so that it's not, if you're working with somebody on a team or you're parenting, it doesn't mean anything about them. It's just like, oh, they need more time to find the data before they feel comfortable moving forward. Right. Or in sales conversations. So I think the more aware we are, the better, which I love this. And I'm curious about note taking and the power or the significance on comprehension with note taking. Is there any correlation with that?
Yes. So when people are learning, even when they're listening to this, there's a learning curve, but there's definitely a forgetting curve also as well. When you hear something on a podcast or you read it in a book, upwards of 80% of it is lost within 48 hours. And that could be a challenge, right? And one of the ways to mitigate that, obviously, is taking notes. Note taking is one of the most powerful tools for learning and for memory. And it doesn't just help you just capture information. It could help you to deepen your understanding and your retention of material. Now, some people prefer digital note taking. Some people prefer handwriting notes. When people are tested, university students, for comprehension and retention, handwriting notes outscores digital note taking.
Yes. Yeah, so good. I'm kinesthetic. And I'm thinking about, these digital note takers. That's not going to be helpful unless they just keep rereading it. For me, actually, the kinesthetic writing it out is what I can see helps deepen my knowing of the material.
Yes. So digital, is very convenient in terms of storing your notes or sharing your notes with other people. But in terms of actual learning, understanding, consolidation, handwriting notes outperforms. I like a very simple way of taking notes. I take a piece of paper, I put a line down the page, and on the left side, I capture. On the right side, I create. So it's a very subtle difference. Like capturing, how do you remember names? How do you read faster? How do you learn a language? You're capturing that information. But if your attention's going to wander, I'd rather wander on the right side of the page, and you're going to create. You're going to write your impressions of what you're capturing. So it could be, how can I use this? How does this relate to what I already know? What questions do I have that I want to post on social media to ask about, what I'm learning about now? When will I use this? Scheduling it and so on. So on the left side, you're capturing or you're note taking. On the right side, you're creating or note making. So note taking, note making. It's just more of a whole brain way of taking notes, kind of using the logical and the imagination. But anything that when your note, it can be mind mapping. There's so many different ways of taking notes. If you could activate multiple senses, especially if you're writing, there's hand physical movement, there's visual engagement, there's cognitive processing, which enforces your memory. And when you're taking notes, you have to be an active listener. Right? It requires you to focus, to think about the information, maybe summarize things in your own words, to filter what's important. Your note taking, it also organizes information, which will help you remember it. You're creating a structured, external memory that you could revisit. And so it also supports long-term retention, especially if you review. So many people take notes, but that's the end of the story. They never look at that notebook again from that event.
Which is better than not taking notes. It's better to take the notes even if you don't review, but then if you review it, even solidifies it further, right?
Yes, especially if you do like spaced repetition, where if you could review it like an hour later, a day later, a week later, it helps to consolidate your short to long-term memory.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, I'm just thinking about, because I do a lot of audiobooks, but if I use this note-taking, the like left and right brain, where I'm writing down some of the bullet points, but also how I'm going to apply it, that will help focus my attention so that it does go in. But what I also hear is to layer on that is to just look at it the next day or repeat looking at it so it solidifies in long-term memory.
And teaching somebody else, learning this information, looking at your notes and sharing some ideas with somebody else. You take advantage of something called the explanation effect. That's why coaches are so great, because they get to learn the information and then coach it so that you learn it even better, right?
I'm like, this is the best profession in the world because we get to enhance our lives and then serve others in doing the same. There's nothing else I would rather do with my time.
I think it's one of the most honorable things people could do is to be able to grow so they have more to give. Yeah.
100%.
Do you want new tools and powerful group exercises to help you deeply and profoundly change your life? Maybe you feel overwhelmed with the idea of starting or scaling your business and wish you had the strategy, the community, and the support to really help you shortcut the learning curve. If so, I want to make sure that you know that our most popular event of the year is back by demand, and it's absolutely free. So this is my 5-day Confidence and Clients Bootcamp, and it's coming up for new and seasoned coaches, therapists, and healers, but it's also for anybody that's wanting to up-level themselves from the inside out and really start the year off strong. So each day I'm going to lead you through a live transformational group process. I'm going to share with you behind-the-scenes coaching demos, pulling people up to coach. And I'll give you daily prizes and tools that you can use on yourself and with your clients right away. So you're going to discover the real reason people don't create change so that you can more easily step into your goals. I'll show you how you can create the income that you desire and practical strategies for where to create clients today for free, as well as heart-centered sales. You can fall in love with sales with this approach. And I'm going to teach you my manifestation packs as well so that you have everything that you need to embody a deeper sense of confidence. And then lastly, I will share share with you, not only tell you, but also show you the power of embodiment work so that you can specifically use it to transform your relationship with money and attract real abundance so that you're really set up to scale with ease in all the ways that you're called to. I cannot wait to share this with you. Again, it's absolutely free, it's transformational, and it's gonna be so good. And research shows that we grow so much faster in community, so send this to a friend that you wanna do this with and help hold yourself accountable. Again, it's free. So join us before it's too late. All you have to do is go to alyssanobriga.com/bootcamp and reserve your space now.
Okay, so that's retention. What about memory? If there are powerful techniques that you didn't share or habits around memory specific, because I know there's lots that you teach. Is there another one that you can share with us?
Yeah, of course. So I believe two of the most costly words sometimes in our life are "I forgot." Think about your career, your life. When you say to yourself, "I forgot to bring it. I forgot to do it. I forgot to go to that appointment. I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot what that person said to me. I forgot that person's name. I forgot what I just read." It just goes on and on. We lose time. We can make errors. We can hurt a relationship. But on the other side, memory is a magnifier, right? It can make you more money or it can create more meaning. When you can easily remember client information or product information, give a TEDx talk from memory, when you can remember facts and figures. I mean, we live in this expert economy where everyone listening, it's not like thousands of years ago where we're paid for our brute strength. Today's our brain strength. It's no longer our muscle power. Today's our mind power. There's 3 keys to a better memory. You can remember MOM, M-O-M. I'll make an acronym because it's easier to remember. Let's say you want to remember something like names. Important. Let's say you have a coaching business and you want to be able to create relationships. It's hard to show someone you're going to care for their life or their finances, whatever coach you are, or parent or teacher, or professional you are, if you don't care about that person. And what's the message we send to somebody when we forget their name, right? So people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, as the saying goes. So let's say someone has trouble remembering names, but we had a suitcase filled with money. And it was theirs. If they just remembered the name of the next stranger they met, who's going to remember that person's name? Right? Everybody.
Yeah.
And so as a coach, as a brain coach, I have to call people, as coaches do, on their BS, their belief systems. So it's not true you can't remember names. The first M stands for motivation, right? And so we don't remember all names, but we don't forget all names either. We tend to remember names of people who could be good for our work, people we might be attracted to, or there's some kind of emotion that's there. And that's one of the keys to a better memory. Information by itself is forgettable, but information, when it's combined with that emotion, becomes unforgettable. I'm sure a lot of people listening, they could hear a song that could take them back to when they were a teenager, or maybe a food or a fragrance that would bring back a memory of when you were a child. So the information by itself is forgettable, but adding emotion makes it unforgettable. And so how do you tap into that motivation? I think it's important. We have a podcast. We've had Simon Sinek on it 3 times, and he has a great book called Start With Why. And so just ask yourself why. You're meeting somebody, ask yourself, why do I want to remember this person's name? Maybe it's to show the person some respect or get a referral from my coaching business. Maybe it's to practice these things I learned on the podcast. And the thing is, you can't come up with a reason, you won't remember a name, because reasons reap results. I believe the success formula for all of us is H cubed, 3 H's. It has to go from your head to your heart to your hands. You could have goals in your head, right? A vision of your life or your career. But if you're not acting consistently with your hands, you're doing the work, check in with the second H, which is our heart, right? Which is a symbol of emotions. And so reasons reap those rewards that we're looking for. And so just ask yourself, why? What are all the benefits that come from applying what I just read in this book or listening on this podcast? Or why should I remember this person's name?
How can I use it?
Yeah, the O in MOM is observation. A lot of people, when they forget something, they blame their retention. And it's not your retention as much as it is your attention. The art of memory is the art of attention. And yet, how do we maintain our attention in a world full of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts, every like, share, comment? We're just driven to distraction, right? And so let's take it back to remembering names. You have this incredible gift, this most amazing supercomputer, advanced supercomputer on the planet. Between your ears, 86 billion brain cells, neurons with upwards of 10,000 synaptic connections. If you extrapolate that, it's more connections than there are in the known universe, stars in the universe. We can remember a name, right? One or two words. A lot of times we're not present, right? We're looking over people's shoulders. We're thinking about how we're going to respond. And even if simple thing to do to be more observant, just think about the word listen. You can write it in your notes or imagine the word listen. And just as a brain teaser, move the letters around, scramble them, and it spells another word perfectly. It spells the word silent.
Wow.
And so many people could remember things better if they were just present with the person. Years ago, I went to a fundraiser. It was like a ballroom for 2,000 people. I go to my round table, and I was the first one there. And then Forrest Whitaker sits next to me. And then Richard Branson sits next to him. And then Ashton Kutcher sits down with his twin brother. And then President Clinton sits right next to me. And he addressed me by name. And I was like, wow. And then I thought, like, oh, of course he knew who he was sitting with, of course. And then he picks up a conversation that we had a few years earlier, and it was a brief conversation, and nobody was privy to that conversation. And I was like, wow, I believe genius leaves clues. When somebody does something extraordinary, there's a method behind what looks like magic. And I'm so curious, and that's like my biggest passion, is kind of uncovering that genius and showing other people how to duplicate it, right? And I was like, I'm a memory coach. I need to know how you're remembering all this information. And he tells me this story, and this is abbreviated, but basically he's telling a story about his grandfather in Arkansas in the living room telling stories. But afterwards to the children, he did something different. He quizzed each child to see if they were really paying attention, right? And when he's telling me this story, I got this feeling. Have you ever been with somebody you felt like you're the only one in the room? Like they're so present with you. And so they're much more important people in that room than me, and certainly at that table than I am. And yet I feel like I'm the only one there. And I think that politics aside, right? Most people would say Clinton, high charisma, great connector, great communicator, and he's got this incredible memory and he's got this powerful presence. But I think his incredible memory and his powerful presence comes from being powerfully present. Yeah. His incredible memory and his powerful presence with people comes from being powerfully present with people. And who's that reserved for? I mean, who has access to that? We all do, right? And so I feel like your attention is a muscle. It grows stronger with use, and just being present with your kids, or practicing being present when you're reading, or you meditate as an exercise, not to get enlightened, but when your mind wanders, which inevitably does, you pull it back to your breath, you pull it back to a mantra, and you exercise your power of presence and concentration.
The greatest gifts we can give each other is our presence. And we have more dopamine and serotonin when we're doing one task at a time. It's been proven. And so not only is you're more productive, but you're also happier. And then it's such a gift to ourselves and to others to drop in that level of presence. What a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So it serves as a reminder to improve your memory. Just tap into the motivation. Why do you want to remember this thing or this person? The O is observation, just a reminder just to be present and to listen. And then the last M in mom are the methods, which are podcasts and our books. And of course, it's just full of like memory, how to learn languages, how to remember a speech, how to remember names. But it's just, I still believe half of success is that mindset, right? And I feel like that observation, that motivation kind of falls under that, just caring, about the person as you would normally do.
Yeah. And I know that you work with a lot of people that are at the top of their game, celebrities, CEOs, like high performers, and yet burnout happens. So what do you recommend for people to recharge and really stay at their best?
Yeah, so I would say, and I posted this on social media, that I feel like burnout sometimes is not because we're doing too much. Sometimes we're burnt out because we're doing too little of the things that make us come alive, or that nurture our souls and our bodies. Self-care could fall into that category. But mental exhaustion, is just very commonplace, right? For anyone that's trying to achieve or do anything or just to live, on the daily. And the good news is not just Just as we train for physical endurance, we can train our brains to recover, to be able to recharge. And so a few things I would think about for everybody: protect your mental energy. Burnout often stems from decision fatigue or constant overstimulation. And so what can you do? Action steps, like a couple quick tips. Everybody has a to-do list. I've been talking about this for like 20 years. I still think it's important for everyone to have a not to-do list. This is your non-negotiables, things you just will not do. Sometimes when we say yes to somebody, we're saying no to ourselves, right? And part of being limitless is putting borders and boundaries, protecting the things that are important to you, like your time, your focus, your energy. So on your not to-do list, decide what tasks or commitments, distractions you'll eliminate. And this frees up all this cognitive bandwidth for what truly matters. So it's not so much like time management. It's really more about priority management or mind management. I think the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing, right? You want to get really good at the things that matter and then put everything else on your not to-do list. And sometimes when we subtract, we multiply. I'm sure people have relationships where a loss was really a gain, right? And then you subtract, so you actually multiply it in the long run. And then part of that is, you can practice things like the 80-20 rule, which a lot of people are familiar with, the Pareto principle, the 20% that gives you 80% of the results and rewards. Part of burnout, getting more resilience is taking care of your body. Most people aren't prioritizing their sleep, and they know sleep is a superpower, that it isn't a luxury, it's essential, especially for your brain, memory consolidation, decision-making, emotional resilience. But most people haven't sat down and really created a sleep ritual. How's your sleep in general?
I was just going to share, I have the best sleep ritual because I know that if I'm in a busy season and I'm working until sleep, my brain's still going to be working while I'm sleeping and the quality of sleep is going to be affected. I've measured it with HRV. So some of the things that I do I know I love morning rituals. I think that's great, but I'm more about the night ritual because of the quality of recovery and sleep. So I have a humidifier because it's loud, so my kids don't wake me up, but it's also more moist in the air. I have an eye mask, so there's no black. I take a cortisol manager, sometimes very little bit of melatonin if I really need it, but I don't work, a few hours before going to bed. And a meditation, I do a yoga nidra, which helps drop the mind into the body, into the present moment. And I do find that meditation, if I'm really busy, if I take 10 to 15 minutes to meditate, it feels like it slows down the day. I make better decisions. I'm also using an energy source that's not just my own personal reserve. I'm tapped into a bigger source of energy that's unlimited and it moves through my body. So I'm not just depleting myself. And I find that to be really helpful.
I love that. Yeah. Well, since I've integrated yoga nidra into my evening routine, it made a big difference. A couple other things for me is getting daylight first thing in the morning has been a marked difference because I measure everything also as well. So even if it's hazy or foggy and you go outside, get 10 minutes, your eyes are the only part of your brain that's outside of your skull. It helps to reset your circadian rhythm. So I sleep better when I do that evening, when I do it that morning. I'm very sensitive to caffeine, so I can't do caffeine past 12 o'clock.
Oh, I can't even do it. Some people can't digest. I took 23andMe and it said I don't even digest caffeine. So I don't have it because I have more energy without it.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, so you could stay in your system. I mean, half-life, it's like 10 hours. So I try to not do much caffeine. I do tea, but I'm kind of jealous of the people who could do like espressos at night. Two of the biggest needle modes for me though at night, like we would know thousands of years ago it'd be time to go to sleep because the environment would tell you. It would decrease in two environmental factors, temperature and light. And so generally, I try to keep it as cold as I can without bothering my wife.
Yeah. What's the temperature? What do you set it at?
We keep it at about 66 Fahrenheit, and it's very good for us. Like, okay. You could also do a hot shower, a sauna, a bath, especially with some kind of salts, because the magnesium, you're absorbing that transdermally, and that could help you relax. But when you get out of that hot bath or shower or sauna or whatever, your core body temperature drops, and that's a signal to produce the melatonin, which is the hormone to help you to relax. Light is a big deal because think about it, like thousand years ago, we couldn't control this stuff. But now in modern conveniences, the temperature could be the same all the time and you have lighting everywhere. But the culprit really is the screens. I saw a video on my Facebook reminders, like 10 years, Simon Sinek and I talking, it has 38 million views. For me, I just say, don't touch your phone the first 30 minutes a day, the last 30 minutes a day. They talk about the blue light and the screens and fooling your mind and thinking it's still daylight, and so you don't produce melatonin. It's not just that. It's not just the light. It's the context and the stimulation from the scrolling, right? Like you would never invite 100 people into your bedroom when you're going to sleep, but it's like you're scrolling and you're hearing from like all these strangers. And for me, habit design is a very important part of what we do because we want to make speed reading a habit, memory a habit, focus a habit. And one of the rules for habit design is you want to make the things that are good for you easier, and you want to make things that are not good for you more difficult, right? If you have those snacks in the kitchen, you're just going to eat them more often. If you have your phone by your nightstand, it's just going to be easier to grab it. Just like if you don't want to do gluten and bread and you're at the restaurant and the waitstaff brings you bread in the beginning of the meal, it's easier to say no once and let them take it away. Otherwise, you're sitting there having to say no to yourself 50 times and exercise your willpower, which we know doesn't last over. It's not sustainable. So yeah, I put my phone in our bathroom and it makes it really easy. So I can't even touch it. And so there's no angst. There have been studies that shown that even having their phone, at the dining table, even if it's down, facing down, it's still, there's a higher level of anxiety just because it's there, right? The anticipation of having to check it and distracts our focus from our family or from, whatever happens to be important.
And are these some of the environmental things that you recommend for people for better mental clarity and focus? Because I know you talk about how certain environments are helpful and others are hurtful. Or is this some of what you mean by that?
Yes, I would say that your external world is a reflection of your internal world, right? So especially even a messy environment. Some say it could help stimulate creativity because there's stimulus that's there, but it does take an immense amount of cognitive energy to just keep track of everything. And I think everyone's had the experience of cleaning off your desk or organizing it, or maybe on their computer screen, everything is in the right file folder. It kind of gives you clarity of mind also as well. So I feel like your environment is a wonderful way to really master more of your mind. Even simple things like reserving your bed for bedtime activities, right? As opposed to working in it or change, because then you associate that everything becomes state dependent and you kind of go in that mode. I even recommend if people can do it, let's say they watch Netflix, just don't do it on your work computer because you'll start having that same kind of association to that. So all learning is state dependent. And so very important to control your state. So declutter your space. For me, clutter competes with your attention and creates mental noise. So taking time to do that. Optimize your lighting. Which is a totally different conversation, but poor lighting could strain your eyes and affect your mood, your energy levels. And it's interesting, like they've been shown certain fluorescent lights could have certain, negative effects on mice and everything. But it's funny, like they'll use the cheapest because it's cheap. They'll use it in schools. They'll use, not the best quality of lighting in office buildings. Your environment, noise reduction, background noise can break your focus and make it harder to concentrate. So some people use whatever kind of ways, earplugs or something like that, or certain music that puts them in a state of learning. You could leverage in your environment color psychology for those who are interested in that, because color can influence mood and energy levels.
What are some examples of that?
Or blue, and everyone's a little bio-individual, just like they are with food, right? Blue generally promotes calmness and focus. Red is more simulates energy. If you want to use calming colors like blue or green, your workspace to enhance your focus, reduce your stress. You could add pops of energizing colors, yellow, orange for creativity and motivation. You could keep your space, visually simple to avoid overstimulation. And then a couple of more things for environment: ergonomic setup, like physical discomfort from poor posture, from an ill-designed workspace can definitely drain your physical energy and your mental energy. A lot of times people are tired not because they need calories, but often because their posture. And, if their diaphragm is
And
collapsed.
then it strains their eyes. Like my eyes went down. I have contacts for the first time in my life because of COVID, because I was on the screen so much, and I was leaning over. I forgot that I could get a bigger monitor or I could zoom in. It's almost like this. There was
Wow.
so much strain on my body that now I wear contacts.
Yeah, good eye health is so important. We deal with that with reading, and certain exercises like palming to kind of reduce eye strain, or looking off in the distance.
Yeah,
But
they say 20, 20, 20. For every 20 minutes, look 20 feet away for 20 seconds.
oh, I like that.
Yeah. I think chat told me that.
I like that. But to talk about completing the thought on the posture, sometimes we're tired because we're bent over, and the lower 1/3 of our lungs can absorb upwards of 2/3 of the oxygen. And your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of nutrients, 20% of the oxygen. And sometimes we're fatigued just because we're not getting the oxygen flow. And so your setup could be important. You also want to even when I talk about air quality, everything from fragrances, candles, new carpeting or furniture, the off-gassing, these neurotoxins, mold could also affect your brain, obviously. And so that's part of your environment. You can manage digital clutter, which is everywhere. You can add some nature into your environment if that has a kind of a calming effect on your brain, to help you improve your concentration, your creativity. Some people like the snake plants, certain
I got them
fruit,
all here in the podcast
yeah.
setup. Yeah. I wanted an enchanted forest. It feels calming to have.
Very
Yeah.
much so. And you can use essential oils. Rosemary has been shown to improve memory. Eucalyptus, peppermint for some kind of refreshing boost. And olfactory is the fastest way to memory, right? It's something what I'll do, like a kind of a brain hack with people need to study a subject. I'll say an actor wants to memorize a script. They could put on a certain essential oil while they're studying it. And then when they need to perform it, wear that same essential oil lip balm or cologne or whatever to help boost that, as long as it's unique, right? Because the environment will get linked to the information.
I heard that they're trying to digitize scent, and that they're making good progress on it. I'm like, how are you going to do that?
Very cool.
Because the same way you would do with music, you're like, how would you take that and digitize it? But they're trying to do that with scent, which is going to be really helpful.
I'm very optimistic. I feel like it's one of the best ways to anchor because all learning is state dependent, and nothing gets to an emotion faster than sense of smell. Probably for survival, right? You need to know when something is bad to eat it or not eat it. So everything in your environment, temperature, if it's too hot or too cold, obviously it's difficult to focus. In our environment, my environment in my office here, I have my visual goals there, and that helps me to stay on track on the most important things. I mentioned I have zones for different activities, a desk for my office work, comfy chair for my reading, a kind of relaxation corner where I do my meditation. So it's kind of anchored there.
And I imagine that also supports with productivity, because as you're setting these things up, it'll help you get into that state and get into that zone. I know a lot of people, at least that I speak with, struggle with procrastination, which my own thought process around procrastination is that they have an internalized parent or a parental voice that's telling them that they should do something. And this is their way of rebelling, to be like, sometimes it's really a procrastination is just a rebellious act inside of them to take their autonomy and freedom back. But I imagine some of these things are helping with productivity as well, right?
Yeah. For procrastination, I have a simple formula for everyone for limitless motivation. And for me, motivation is not something you have, it's something you do. So a first principle, the work that we do in our courses and in books and everything, is taking nouns in our lives and turning them into verbs. Because I feel like the nature of our work, you and I and a lot of your community, is about transcending. I mean, you think about the word transcend, you're ending the trance. We're helping people break the hypnosis through marketing, media, our families, whatever, or our inner dialogue that somehow we're not enough, somehow we're fixed in a certain way or are broken. Or when I say fixed, it's kind of like stuck in a certain way. And so you don't have focus, you do it. Like having is a noun. You don't have focus. There's a process for focusing. You don't have a memory. There's a 3-stage process for memorizing something, right? You encode it, you store it, you retrieve it. You don't even have energy. There's a process for generating energy. And so the benefit of doing that, because if you either have it or don't have it, then you're kind of stuck. But if it's a process, you just do it or don't do it. And so my goal is to bring people those processes, the methods behind the magic. And so I found through my experience, 33 years of coaching as a brain coach, I realized that some people know what to do, but they don't do what they know because common sense is not common practice. And there are 2 things that have to come before the methods. And I outlined the Limitless model. It's a whole Venn diagram. It's their mindset, which is, do you believe it's possible? Do you believe you deserve it? Do you believe you're capable of it? Because you could have a great method for making money, but if your mindset is money is the root of all evil, you have to hurt people to make money, you're still going to be stuck, right? Or if often at events, people pull me aside and say, Jim, so glad you're here as a memory coach, and they'll say, I have a horrible memory. I'm just getting too old. I've never been that smart. And I always say, same thing. I say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limits, they're yours. Me, I was saying for years, I have the broken brain. And it just, that power of belief, right? And it's not even that one of my mentors, Wayne Dyer, many people know, he said, it's not that so much you'll believe it when you see it. It's the opposite. You'll start seeing it when you start believing it, because all behavior is belief driven. Your brain is this incredible supercomputer, and your self-talk is a program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering names, you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. But the second M that has to be addressed also besides your mindset is motivation. So if you self-sabotage, that's a mindset issue. If you procrastinate, that's a motivation issue. And there's a 3-part strategy or formula for limitless motivation: to motivate yourself to do the things you know you should do, or to motivate somebody else, to motivate someone to buy your product, to motivate somebody to your kids to clean their room. And here it is very quick. The letter P times the letter E times S3. P times E times S3. And I'm hydrating a lot also because your brain is mostly water. And just want to remind everybody to, what you drink matters, especially to your gray matter. So P times E times S3. So let's break it down. Let's say you want to motivate yourself to exercise. Exercise is great for the brain. And I don't just mean doing Pilates or yoga 3 times a week or CrossFit. I mean how much you're moving throughout the day, right? As your body moves, your brain grooves. And they say sitting is the new smoking. And we're sitting behind screens all the time, especially during the pandemic, and we're not moving our bodies as much. When you move your body, you know this, you create a BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors. What is it? It's like fertilizer for neuroplasticity. When you move and exercise, you create dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, all very important for cognitive health and wellness. You get airflow, you get all these benefits, resistance training, so many benefits. But if you're not doing it, maybe going back to the example for motivation, the P stands for purpose. So remember when remembering names, reasons, reap results, a lot of people, they know they should do it, but they don't feel. An example in the wellness space, years ago, I was out and I saw someone I kind of recognized, but I didn't know who it was, which is the most embarrassing thing because, if you see me live at events, if there's time, I'll memorize 100 people's names in an audience and do all these things. I didn't recognize him. But when he opened his mouth and he said hello to me, he knew who I was. I recognized his voice, and then I knew exactly who he was. But he looked completely different, and the backstory is, as I've known this person is like picture of being unhealthy and was almost proud, took pride in it, right? But now that I see him, he's like stopped smoking, he lost all his weight, he has this glow, he looks so much younger. And I said, I believe everyone has something to teach me. And I was like, genius leaves clues. Like, you look great. What are you doing? And he tells me all the list of things he's doing. And I said to him, I told you all that stuff for years and you didn't do any of it. And he's like, yeah, but, I got back I went on a business trip. I came back and I came home to my daughter crying hysterically. She's never cried like this before. And when she stops, I find out that she had a nightmare that I died and wasn't there for, so on. And it went from his head to his heart, right? And instantly he made the change. And so the P P times E times S3 for motivation, purpose. Always start with a purpose. And it can't be here. It has to be here, meaning your heart. You have to feel it. And then the E, let's say you want to work out. The E is energy. You need energy because exhaustion will make anyone a procrastinator, right? Like how motivated are you? Like we have a newborn and a 2-year-old, and we're not getting a lot of sleep in the household, right? And so how motivated when you're exhausted are you to read, to do presentations, to work out, right? And so I realized, again, with energy, you don't have energy now, you do it. There's a process for generating energy, which involves, certain brain foods, certain movements, certain breathing, certain sleep, stress management, positive peer group, and all these very important things. And so you need the energy. Like if you eat a big processed meal, you're not going to be very in a food coma, and you want to motivate yourself to read. Like people see pictures of me with Oprah or Elon or whoever, invariably people ask, well, how did we meet? How did we bond? And I'll tell you, we bonded over books, right? You read to succeed. If somebody has decades of experience and they put into a book and you can sit down a few days and read that book, you can download decades into days. That's the biggest advantage that there is. Plus people ask all the time, what's the best brain exercise you could do? It's reading by far. Reading is your mind, what exercises your body.
And for somebody like me who has a reading disability, I'll do audio and sometimes I'll also buy the book so that I have both to keep my attention and really focus.
I love that. And sometimes you read audio, you maybe listen to audio a little faster, depending on that also as well. Absolutely. And so just consuming that information, and every new idea is making your brain. When I mentioned neuroplasticity, I know most people know it's that phenomenon that your brain can grow older, but you can make new connections, as you age. And how does connections happen? Through two things: novelty and nutrition. Just like if you want to build your physical muscles, what do? You work it out. You give it novelty, some kind of stimulus, and exercise, and then you give it nutrition. So you give it the amino acids, the proteins to be able to grow. Right. Same thing with your mental muscles. You want to have neuroplasticity, novelty, and nutrition.
And the more you remember, the bigger your memory grows. It's not the opposite, right? Because when I was a kid, I was like, oh, it's going to hit its limit. And I don't know if people still think that.
No, that's it's absolutely true. It's not like your cup is full and you have to empty it to put new information in. Your brain doesn't grow that way. It's just like somebody at the gym who's incredibly fit. The more exercise they do, the stronger they get, the more they can do, right? The challenge is if you go to the gym, you see somebody deadlifting or bench pressing a huge amount of weight, you say, oh, that's easy for them because they're strong. It's like, no, they're strong because that's what they're doing every single day. With the brain, it's a little bit different because you can't see these mental muscles. That's why if people watch this on video, they'll see I'm wearing a shirt with a brain. I'm always on social media pointing to my brain. Just as a reminder to everybody, what you see, you take care of, because it's your awareness. You see your car, your skin, your hair, your clothes, when it's getting out of shape or getting below quality, whatever. But you don't see the thing that takes care of us, which is your brain. And I feel like it's the most beautiful gift and responsibility that we have. So that's energy. So again, the key for limitless motivation: tap into purpose, really enhance your energy. Because again, if you ate a processed meal, you're not going to be very motivated to read that day or to do any of the things you need to do. And then the S3 are small, simple steps. Because think about why people procrastinate. They either procrastinate because they don't have a reason to do that thing, or at least they don't feel the reason until, maybe the day before taxes are due or something, and their emotions change, right? Or they don't have the energy, right? Or sometimes people procrastinate because that thing is too big, it's too intimidating, it's too unknown, it's too confusing. And a confused mind doesn't do anything. And so let's say, going back to working out, maybe that's too big of a jump for somebody that's not their routine. S3 stands for small, simple steps. So maybe it's not working out. Maybe your small, simple step is putting on your running shoes. All right. Maybe on our podcast, we've done over 400 episodes. We had recently a biological dentist, and he was talking about how oral health is linked to brain health. And we're talking about what to do beyond brushing. Right. Like things like oil pulling, things like tongue scraping, all these things. We're talking about flossing. I was thinking about how do you get your kids to floss? And S3 is, well, maybe flossing all their teeth would be too big of a jump. Flossing one tooth, right? Because nobody's going to stop at one. That's a small, simple step. Let's say you don't want to read 30 minutes a day because that's too big of a jump. Opening up the book is an S3. or reading one line is an S3. Because the idea here is inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's just too hard. But little by little, a little becomes a lot. And how do you find your S3? So next time you feel stalled and you're procrastinating, ask yourself this question. What is the tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards this goal where I can't fail? What is the tiniest action you could take right now that will give you progress towards this goal where you can't fail? And then you have your S3. So that would be my 3 suggestions for tapping into motivation, for motivating yourself to do things you should do, or motivating somebody else to do what they should do. Like maybe they're not buying your product because they don't feel purpose, or they don't have the energy, or that can be money or whatever, or you're making it too confusing for them. How can you break it down into something very small and get consistency? Even on a marketing campaign or an opt-in page, how do you make it so super simple they can't fail?
And I love that all of this work applies to every area of our life. So as people are listening to this, it's like, what's one simple thing you can do from listening to this podcast? So it's not just something you heard, but you action, right? From head to heart to hands, which I loved. You are such a gift, Jim. I know we could dive into all the different avenues, and I know my audience is going to want to stay connected. Talk to us about what you're doing and where they stay connected.
Well, I want to thank you. There's different ways. I mentioned a podcast. They could just search my name in their podcast app. We have a major big event for thousands of people who are excited about brain health and brain performance in LA, March 6th, 7th, and 8th. Everyone from Dr. Daniel Amen to Dr. Gabby Lyons. It's like the most amazing cast of faculty. That's limitlesslive.com. It's a 3-day immersion. It'll be the largest brain performance accelerated learning event ever. Limitless, we donated all the proceeds of my book Limitless to charity. For girls, we built schools in Ghana, Guatemala, Kenya, in villages that didn't have schools, and also Alzheimer's research. We funded Alzheimer's research for women, because women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. So we did that in memory of my grandmother, who I lost to Alzheimer's when I was 7. And and on social media, I would love people actually just to take a screenshot of the two of us wherever you're consuming this and post it online and tag us both so we get to see it. And going back to, if you want to learn something better, teach it. Share one thing you're going to do for a better brain. Maybe you're going to add some blueberries or avocados, or maybe you're going to move a little bit more. Maybe you're going to use that mom thing that we talked about, or some of the sleep things that we discussed, or share your brain animal. Yeah, when you do go to mybrainanimal.com, we give you a detailed PDF report, how to study, learn, focus, remember based on your brain type. Parent, cell, there's lead, hire, manage, everything. But we'll give you one of these kind of AI drawings. You can post that. 'Cause I'm curious, like what the dominant brain type animal is of your community. But if you post it and tag us both, we'll get to see it. And I'll gift out just 3 signed copies of Limitless at random, just as a thank you for having me on the show. So yeah, I really love this conversation.
Me too. And thank you for your generosity and just the way you move through the world. It's such a breath of fresh air. And I get why our communities are connected now. I'm grateful to be connected to you. Thank you, Jim.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing this work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a difference. And if you're finding value in this podcast, a cost-free way to support us is by leaving an up to 5-star review. It does mean the world to us. And as a thank you gift, we're going to send you one of the most powerful tools that you will ever discover. You're going to get behind the scenes access showing you how to live into your full potential without letting fear hold you back from stepping into your dreams. Just head over to Apple Podcast or Spotify and leave a review now. You can take a screenshot before hitting submit and then go to alyssanobriga.com/podcast to upload it. And make sure to have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much magic I can't wait to share with you. And you can find all this information in the show notes below. But lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello. I'm at Alyssa Nobriga. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you.